their mind. So I totally agree with that. And I think that the third party unity, like if there's ever going to be a successful third party candidate, they're not only going to have to unify all those leftist third parties, but in my opinion, and I know this is a little bit controversial, but like I genuinely think that about 75% of people that end up voting libertarian they don't actually believe in libertarianism. They just believe in like, I want legal weed and I don't want the government in my business. So they're not actually they don't actually believe in the tenets of libertarian economics, which is something that's very far removed from, progressivism or socialism. But I think the vast majority of the people that vote libertarian could easily be funneled into a movement for a people's party if they embrace the right messaging, if they, put an emphasis on freedom and the fact that we're in favor of government programs, but it's not like, it's not like big
freedom
government.
From corporate oligarchy is the way that I think it should be marketed to them.
Freedom from corporate, and making the point that, just because, sometimes the government has to come in to prevent corporate tyranny. There's government tyranny, yes, but there's also corporate tyranny, which we're seeing, the government totally allow. So I think if it's marketed right, it could totally coalesce that vote. Trust me, there's a lot of people that I know that voted for Bernie, that supported Bernie, but then they turned around and voted for Joe Jorgensen. Obviously libertarianism is not what Bernie Sanders was repping at all. That's the furthest from, his socialist values. But when it comes to voters, they don't necessarily vote based on some really, well thought out political philosophy that they have. They just kind of vote on who's offering them something that they want. And I think that that's what the libertarians have, to whatever degree they have been successful. I think that's what their success has been, the fact that they're just making their party look cool with those promises. So I think that's another thing we can think about and even get some of those voters too.
And I think that the Libertarian Party captures something that's an overwhelming feeling of just the ineptitude of our government and just this apathy toward, and this feeling of anything good coming from the government is just an impossibility. So the only thing that you can do is reduce the harm that the government is going to impose on you. And this is something that the Republican Party has leached onto, right? It's something that, Thomas Frank got into with his famous book, What's the Matter with Kansas, right? People are so convinced that the government can't do anything positive to benefit them. So that's why the Republicans were able to, gain all this support on evangelical issues, things like that. And it's why the Libertarians are able to say, we're going to not allow any of this so that you don't have to pay any taxes. It's this idea that any taxes is just money lost because you're not getting any tangible, visible return on it, right? Like in theory, it's going to pave roads or, pay for schools, but really, how much of it is going to that? Not a lot. A lot of it's going to the war machine. A lot of it's going to bail out Wall Street, people who are already way richer, way better off than you. Yeah. It makes sense that all of these people are just like, fuck it, I don't want to contribute to that game. And I think one of the effective messaging is to kind of, talk about how, obviously you don't want to have the tyranny of the government weighing down on you, which is something that many libertarians are concerned with, but you also don't want to have the tyranny of the corporation weighing down on you. So I think that there's a lot of room in that vein to start the conversation there and talking about tyranny from a corporation. And, under a libertarian society, there would be no democratic voice to push back against anything. Because obviously there's no workplace democracy, as you and your show has sort of, built your namesake on.
Yeah. And I think that on the issue of workplace democracy as well, I think that that's something that you can pull over some libertarian voters with as well, because if your issue is big government, the way that you can disempower the government is by providing more and these large corporations and the tyranny of the corporation. I think that the way that you get around that is by making sure that the people maintain control and power over that, and it doesn't expand. We're not talking about the sort of state capitalist or what they call like authoritarian socialism, big C communism, where you have the massive power given over to the state. I don't care who the employer is, whether it's the state or a private entity. I think that the problem is the fact that they're an employer, not what their name happens to be. And so I think that that's a message that could also resonate. And I hope that they will try to adopt some of that messaging, because I think it's such an important issue. And it's the kind of thing where it's like you said, people want something that they can see and feel. They need something that feels like, hey, if you tell people, listen, tomorrow you're going to walk into your workplace, and you're going to be able to have democratic control over that thing. Like that's something that people can see and feel, and can actually, again, and also like, you know, it teaches them how to participate in the democracy. Even I don't think that people really know how to participate in democracy because we're so far removed from it. So I do agree with that. I also think that on the topic of like harm reduction that they like to use, and they always like to use the issue of like harm reduction, I've heard it framed a really good way by a leftist activist that I follow, who said that, you know, it's not really what we're doing when we talk about like voting for the lesser of two evils and doing this harm reduction. It's not truly harm reduction. What we're doing is harm deferment with interest. You know, we're not really reducing the harm. We're just deferring it over onto a set of people that are going to get hit harder later. So we can, you know, we can reduce harm with a Joe Biden for the next 4 years. Sure. Maybe, you know, net pain for the masses of people will likely be reduced. You know, he'll handle COVID a little bit better, things like that. It'll be reduced. But what's the reaction to a Joe Biden? Remember that, you know, Joe Biden was, you know, Obama Biden was the precursor to Donald Trump. So what do you think Biden Harris is going to be a precursor to? You know, something I fear far worse than Donald Trump could arise from that. And those next set of people that might be hurt in 4 years, it might be far more people than ever would have been hurt before. So I do think that it's really, you know, this is an important time and like a critical moment for the left to start to push it. Not just, you know, not just the left, but you know, the masses of people. And we don't have to call it just the left, because like you said, I think there's a coalition to build across the left, you know, some of the populist right even, and the sort of libertarian folks, the folks that a lot of people self-identify incorrectly. If you ask them what they are, they'll say libertarian, run down the issues with them, and they're more of a leftist. And so I think that we can run on the issues, not try to avoid labels at all costs, you know, avoid the socialist label, run on the FDR message, I think is the real winner. And like What Up America is saying here, he said, you know, last time the left came together, the Great Depression ended. It was communists, socialists, and unions, and they threatened FDR to assert their will. That's absolutely accurate. And I think that, you know, if you run on the FDR messaging and say, listen, we're just going to be like the new FDR. We just want to do the new deal, you know, and I think that is better messaging, and that that's the sort of, you know, those are popular policies, and we can win with that, and build coalitions. But I think first coalition we need to build is amongst the left, and making sure that we can consolidate and coalesce these left groups the same way that we saw on Bloody Monday in those primaries. The establishment was able to coalesce behind Joe Biden. We have to think strategically like that on the left. If we're serious about winning, if we want to win, we have to start to win in primaries. And the only way we're going to do that is if we have a unified left. I've done PSL events. I've been to DSA events. I've been to, you know, like I've voted in the Green Party, you know, like I am one voter. I'm one person that is clearly aligned with all of these groups. So I know I'm not alone in that, and that if we can, that's our first task, I think, on the left, is to try to fight to coalesce those groups. And then the next step forward is to start to coalition build across, the spectrum with people. Things like money in politics, getting money out of politics is popular, not just on the left, but on the right. It's overwhelmingly popular as well. And so there are issues that we all believe in that are economic, populist issues that we can run on without sacrificing any of our principles. We don't have to sacrifice our principles. We don't have to say, okay, it's okay if you hate gay people and you think that trans people aren't human beings. No, we're not going to play those games. Michael Brooks has a great talk that he did at Lafayette University where he talks about program versus rhetoric. We need to be focused on program over rhetoric. If somebody comes in and they're like, listen, I want to fight for Medicare for all, but I'm not working with gay people. It's like, no, we're done. We're not debating with those. That there's no conversation to be had about that. But if they come in and they're like, listen, I want to help you fight for Medicare for all, and also I just watched this cool Bill Burr special that I thought was totally hilarious. And if your response to that is like, all right, nope, stop. We're going to need to unpack this for the next 12 hours. We're going to halt this meeting and we can't go any further. That kind of stuff. It's unwelcoming. It's uninviting. It's a losing strategy. And we're not going to coalition build like that. So what we have to do is focus on the issues that matter without sacrificing any of our principles and build coalition. And so that's the fight, I think, for the next few years for us.
I totally agree. And that's been a huge mission here at the Vanguard, is just trying to unite people that I think have a lot in common that may not be on the same page. Like Zach and I talked to a libertarian, Aria DeMezzo, who ran for
great interview. I loved it. I watched the whole thing. That was awesome.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
And she's a libertarian, right? But I couldn't argue with her that her main problem, of course, with taxes and all that stuff is that it is going to fund the war machine.
Yeah.
A majority of your taxes do go to these companies to fund these immoral acts, and so I mean, I'm not going to make fun of libertarians or people that feel that way, because I can't even argue with that. That's something that's true. So I think you're totally right that we need to really unify, and obviously I'm not saying unify with all libertarians. There's a lot of libertarians that are fucking crazy. I'm not.
Yeah, anarcho like capitalists essentially.
Peter Schiff crowd.
Yeah,
But I do think there needs to be a lot of work done as far as refining the way we communicate with other people that may not be already on the same page as far as socialism and as far as these concepts, as far as just coaxing them towards these beliefs with logic and rational thought that makes sense, and we could totally work with someone like Arya who wants to decrease the military,
defund the police, like
even Spike Cohen, who we had on our show. We were like, you know what, like I and we had plenty of things to disagree with Spike Cohen about, obviously, but even he was down with defunding the police. So I think while Gavin and
Bundy, the like right wing guy that was like did the his dad and him the Bundy standoff, and where they were like against the federal government, like he came out in support of Black Lives Matter, and I covered it on another podcast I do, Race Just Media, and we covered it on there. And it was like, these people are principled. There are principled people that can stand with us on certain issues, even social issues like that, where they will stand in solidarity, because it's if you go to like the like even like the liberal redneck, I think his name is, like, talked about this thing where it's like, if you go to some of these like redneck sort of areas and talk about like ATF to these people, they hate ATF, they despise ATF. They come in there, they fuck with their guns, they don't like people coming in and infringing on their gun rights and stuff like that. Like, they want to defund those police, like, we need to align ourselves with them. If I can win that fight, I don't care. Noam Chomsky talks about this too. Like, you can't be overly concerned with, just because some bad person happens to agree with you on an issue, it doesn't mean that you should move your position off of that issue.